have the honor to represent the Senate President in this very, very important summit, which could not have come at a better time than now. So I will read, normally I will read what the President of the Senate has said I should say, but I always try to crave and ride on that privilege and add my own addendum if I believe in the subject of discourse. So, having said the protocol, let me read the President's speech. It is with great pleasure that I present to you this message of goodwill on behalf of the Senate and indeed the National Assembly. Recognize and commend organizers of this summit, the HallowMace, for the choice of the theme, the importance of legislature in Nigeria's democratic governance. Progress, challenges, and prospects. This selection is truly central to our goals and objectives as students of representative democracy. Nigeria has, in her lifetime of almost 6 decades of existence, gone through various forms and processes of governance until the democratic process which we currently practice came into being. And there is no gainsaying that this democracy promises to yield the best dividend for Nigerians. A system of government that vests power on the whole people, including the power to elect representatives from among themselves, to make laws for their own good in line with dictates of the Constitution. This, in essence, underscores the critical nature and position of Parliament as an indispensable item in the democratic process of this country. The Senate and the House of Representatives of the National Assembly consist of elected individuals from the various constituencies in the country, vested with the constitutional mandate to ensure adequate representation and reportage of plight and needs of common man in the central governance picture, including extensive oversight of the executive. However, the legislative journey in the onset of this democracy has not been an easy one. The challenges not limited to the peculiarity of our developmental problems, the process and utilization of our budget and the budgetary process, public projection and perception of the activities of the National Assembly, to mention but a few. This is why this task of development is the responsibility of each and every one of us, especially the media, who in the performance of your duties must do so in the interests of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. False, negative, and inciting projections of the legislature cannot achieve the intended development, but will inevitably have receding effect on the achievements made so far. I am almost happy with the association of the National Orientation Agency in this commendable project of reorientating Nigerians on the need and importance of the legislature in the democratic and governance process. The Senate and indeed the National Assembly will continue to be in support of positive initiatives like this, geared towards the right development of the average Nigerians. It is with this that I wish you all a great summit and fruitful deliberations, and thank you for giving me the privilege to appear before you to give this goodwill message. This is what the President of the Senate has said. His deputy leader, who has the privilege of representing him, would like to add an addendum. And what is it about? Two things have dominated discourse as far as democratic process in this country is concerned. And they have always been the tool that the press, with due respect, and those enemies of democracy have used in order to continue to demean the process of our democratic governance. In the absence of legislature, you all know, we do not have a democracy. In the wisdom of the framers of our Constitution, they decided that there will be a constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which again, some critics have found it convenient to say is not a people constitution. I'm happy Professor Ladan is here. He knows what it is in the process of having a constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And let me say that there will never be a day that you will have that fictitious thinking that a constitution is made by the people. How do they participate? How? In all processes known all over the world, what happens is that some selected people representing diverse opinions and shades of tribes and whatever are selected to bring out what they believe should be what will band us together. It is in the wisdom of the military that when they were going, they did the same and gave us what they call the 1999 Constitution. Now, the process of accepting a constitution is by the conduct of the people themselves. The Constitution created offices, that of the president, governors, members of the Senate, House of Representatives, local government chairmen, and councillors. When the call was made for people to come and elect their leaders, there was not a single section of this country that said we are not going to elect anybody. So by participating in the election of that governance structure, it means the people have accepted the Constitution. That's why we have the structure that we have today. That's why you can call a president. That's why you can call me now Deputy Senate Leader. So let no one deceive you into saying that the 1999 Constitution is not a people's constitution. That is not the process. That is not the jurisprudence of constitutional making.
And now, we have tried hard, ladies and gentlemen, to mobilize Nigerians to be democratic and participate in this government. Then we got a letter from a company called HallowMace Communications Limited requesting us to collaborate for a summit like this, to call the attention of people actually to the workings of the National Assembly and their importance in our very existence. This vibrant young man, Mr. Sonny Anderson, is the managing director of HallowMace Communications Limited. This company has actually done great work in reporting and covering activities in the National Assembly. We are very pleased to collaborate with them because of the positivity of the message. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Sonny Anderson.
Senator Abubakar Bukola Saraki, represented by Senator Ben Naala, Deputy Majority Leader of the Senate. Members of the Federal and State Assemblies here present. The Clerk to the National Assembly, Alhaji Mohammed Sani Omolori, represented by Mr. Debo. Director General of National Institute for Legislative Studies, Professor Ladi Hamalai, represented by Professor Ladan. Director General of National Orientation Agency, members of the press, all esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to today's event, an occasion which seeks to interrogate the inner workings of the legislature, its challenges and importance in entrenching democracy in Nigeria. As you are all aware, the legislature is an indispensable organ of government in a democracy, and it is quite uncomfortable for me that close to 2 decades of our democratic journey in this Fourth Republic, we still refer to our democracy as nascent. It is my firm belief that the destiny and survival of Nigeria is tied to the successes of our democracy, and most especially the legislature. It is this awareness that has sustained our abiding interest in the legislature and nothing more. We are mindful and concerned about the legislature because it is the soul of modern government. Our thinking is that we must wish for this arm of government to live up to the expectation and desire of the thinkers of the modern government for its creation. Our colonial heritage, military experience, fragile political arrangements, weak economic base and tortuous journey since the return to democracy in 1999 have all made it imperative for the legislature to mature and succeed. The structural contradictions, tendencies make our desire for good governance and articulate legislature a compelling desire. Truly, my heart is filled with gratitude to you all. I'm full of nostalgia about when and how we started HallowMace Communications, just a little over 3 years ago. Let me not delude anybody. The journey has been tough, but pleasurable because we are in our own we in our own modest ways contributing to the shaping of national perspectives, and as a media platform is devoted to the coverage of a very important institution of government, which is the legislature. From our humble beginnings, we have diversified into broadcasting by obtaining a license for a radio station, while we intend to follow it up with a television station in no distant future. All of these, in spite of our appearance on the social media platforms, have been made possible because of the tireless devotion of many who have made it their business to support our vision. From all of these achievements, our sense of indebtedness knows no bound. Indeed, my aspiration, whenever the odds are stacked against me, especially at my early stages of our publication, I often recall the saying of the poet, William Black, who once wrote, "Great things are done when men and mountains meet. They are not done by jostling in the street." Such sentiments have been my starving power in meeting with the challenges of life, and quite certain that when we remain focused, then the mountain top is secured. Of a fact, we operate in a political environment, and this comes with the extra burden of suspicion, distrust, and open hostility on the part of some people who feel that perception, right or wrong, is right. They feel that as journalists, we have made what is not our business ours. But that is the essence of journalism. Journalism is reporting events and personalities, and nothing is personal about it. Truly, I feel sorry for some members of the parliament with excellent sense of devotion to their duty that are lumped together with some not too decent colleagues, but are rubbish for no fault of theirs. We live in a very interesting time since the advent of the 8th Assembly, and these are not unconnected to events leading to the emergence of the both leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives. On this said occasion, the Senator Abubakar Bukola Saraki and Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, against all perceptions and preference of their political party, the APC, won, and ever since there have been a contrived crisis, especially in the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that the great responsibility thrust upon the legislature is not misplaced. Undoubtedly, the political development and frightful experiences in some instances have remained, for me, a spectacle to report. The development and progress of the legislature is hinged on a couple of factors. I should like to emphasize before this highly cerebral and informed audience that the present challenges before the legislature will make it stronger and better if its leadership can rise up to the occasion by providing exemplary leadership. The task of providing good governance makes it inevitable for the legislature to deliver on this by merely collaborating with the executive. That doesn't exclude them from taking a decentric posture with the executive when, as if necessary, to assert its independence. The notion that the legislature is a mere appendage of the executive to be bullied and manipulated doesn't hold sway any longer. For us at HallowMace Communications, our journey has been that of a sweet, bitter experience, which is not unexpected of a media outfit operating in this kind of environment such as ours. Here, I refer to a couple of stumbling blocks on our way, but our resolve to face and overcome any and every mountain to the promised land has been monumental. Save for sheer faith, we would have packed up and revert to something else. Fortitude and vision sustain us in this stimulating journey, and we will continue to, for the foreseeable future, and because of our love for the profession, deliver on a mandate without fear or favor. Intrigues and surprises have characterized the politics in the legislature, but in all of this, my knowledge and understanding of the science and art of both politics and governance have further deepened. The pursuit of this interest has spurred me on when the balance sheet has not been so encouraging. Coupled with this are instances capable of frustrating one, especially when there is no patronage in terms of commercials or advertisement. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, it is the importance of the legislature that informed today's interrogation, with a view that our invitees would present a way out of it, and what is turning out to be a potentially contentious impression about an extremely important arm of modern-day democracy. We are handling an open sore that keeps growing to an unacceptable level. My engagement with the legislature as a journalist with restless devotion has made this discourse inevitable. The discourse at this time centers on certain experiences and themes. I have wondered why, as an indispensable pillar in a constitutional democracy, such as the legislature, can come under sustained attacks, and have realized that there are certain factors responsible for this: perception and violence of thoughts, the actions of some parliamentarians, and even the unwillingness of some people to have an understanding of the proper role and functions of the legislature itself. The legislature, entrusted by the Constitution to make laws and play oversight functions over government agencies, is entrusted with the safeguarding the nation by its undisputable central role in government that is critical to the growth and development of all democratic societies. This arm of government plays a pivotal role in aggregating collective interests of the people and translating them into tangibility by a way of making good laws for good governance and administration of justice and fairness to all. That is the fundamental role, and anything short of that is anomaly. That summation of the importance of the legislature is inferable from the inherent representative nature of its composition, in that they include representatives of the people in all parts of the polity, the whole country in the case of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and the whole state in the case of the State House of Assembly. What this means is that potentially every part of the country or state will feel a sense of belonging because they all have representatives in the hallowed chamber. Beyond the well-known workings of the parliament, lawmaking involves negotiations amongst representatives of different areas of the country or states, different interests and different ideological orientations. It also includes negotiations with the executive arm of government and the political parties to which the parliamentarians belong. This is where the committee system in the legislature is crucial. Distinguished guests and participants, the next cycle of election is crucial to us, both as a country and as a people. The magnitude of our expectation for good governance can, in the final analysis, come under siege or receive tractions if we have a responsive, forward-thinking, and visionary legislature. Watching and reporting the legislature leaves me with mixed feelings. I have some parliamentarians with excellence of disposition to their work, and I have equally seen with little stellar performance. The 8th Assembly has done marvelously well under the leadership of Senator Abubakar Bukola Saraki. Thank you most precisely for your time. God bless you all. It is my expectation that we all have fruitful deliberation with thoughtfulness and objectivity that will help us refine and strengthen our democratic architecture. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Our friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from my DG, Dr. Garba Barry. He also said I should commend the initiators of these projects for their wisdom. Especially, we all know that it's not all Nigerians or everybody that understands the processes and procedures in the legislative arm of government. The partnership with NOAA is also well thought out because of our broad structure from local government, from federal government to down to local government level. And that was why immediately our DG got this letter, he didn't waste time in approving the partnership. Democracy, we all know, survives on public perception and understanding of the institutions of power. Therefore, any attempt to deepen and broaden this perception will do the whole people well, and even the nation as a whole. After all, we all chose to be a democratic country. All over the world, we know that the best model is democracy, and nothing has been found to replace this model of the best governance. We thank you all for coming, and the DG wishes the summit well and successful outing. Thank you very much.
It's a great privilege to be here today, and particularly I'm somebody that has a lot of interest in legislative matters, and on behalf of the commercial, behalf of the Sector Commander FCT, I wish us great deliberation today in our activities as we look at these important issues that has to do with an aspect of governance that so many people are not aware of, knowing fully well that without the legislator, democracy as we define it cannot be complete. So I believe that as we are gathered today, a lot will be learned by all of us, and the issues that will be raised will help us to appreciate more the work that is being done in the National Assembly. I wish us better and effective deliberations today. Thank you very much.
That I do not commit any offense. Actually, I won't have much to say, but as Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Affairs, I want to commend HallowMace and Nigeria National Orientation Agency for this very wonderful conference. My just little contribution is about the perception of the National Assembly by the Nigerian public. It is actually unfortunate that sometimes we are being perceived different from the role given to us by the Constitution. Just like my senior colleague here said, even Allah, who was in the House of Reps before and still in the Senate, has been there. And the truth is that we have a responsibility to make laws. We represent the people. We do oversight function. Now, members of the National Assembly, today we have very learned people in the National Assembly. But each time you open the national dailies, we are likened to contractors. We are likened to people who do not sit in the house. The perception is actually not very nice. And I think it's not just in Nigeria. Probably it's because it's a new arm of government. I said so because even under the military dictatorship, the executive and the legislature and the executive and the judiciary is always there. It is only the legislature that always suffers it. So once there is a coup, you don't need to tell anybody that the legislature should pack their belongings and go away. But the only symbol of democracy in Nigeria, or in everywhere in democracy, is the presence of the legislature. So each time we try to do our job, people feel as if we are being antagonistic. We are not on the same page with the executive. We must be on the same page, but we should have our own also duties. For example, let me give one slight example. Now, if the executive send any nominee to the Senate for confirmation, the Nigerian public believe that the Senate should have no business to say, no, each time it comes, you just stamped and go. The day you say you will not confirm, you have advanced your reasons, people take it differently. I think this should not be taken in that manner. Again, for example, let me give an example also on the $1 billion that was said to be approved by government in order to purchase military hardware and what have you. The truth is that I am from the Northeast. I can't see how the National Assembly will be against approval of a particular $1 billion to enhance security and what have you. But due process has to be followed. Our argument in the National Assembly that, okay, we cannot do the work of the executive. The executive should not do the work of the legislature. So what happens? We expect that we are the only body that appropriate funds. Therefore, if a decision must be taken for approval, it just have to go to the National Assembly. It is the National Assembly will approve. So when we say no, why is it that it was not brought to the National Assembly? The perception again is that why are these people fighting the executive on these matters? I think these are the issues, please, we should be able to look passionately. And I believe we have capable speakers here. Our roles are quite different. We can also not make laws and also interpret the laws, because the laws are being interpreted by the judiciary. We can't execute these laws because they are executed by the executive. So all of us have our own function. But please, each time the National Assembly picks an issue and say, look, it should be done in this manner, you find that the perception is always different. And that is why I want to call on my friends in the media. I've been a journalist myself for quite some decades, and I feel that we should assist us in this regard. The regard is that, look, This is our function. We should be able to allow to do these functions, and Nigerians should be educated. We are not being antagonistic. The fact is that's why government has said, look, this is executive, this is legislature, and this is the judiciary. Everybody should play its role. Of course, it can be complementary, because for the good governance, we need to work also in harmony with other arms of government. But the truth again, we must be seen to do it diligently, objectively, and whatever for the good of the nation. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I want to commend this effort, because those of us that are pretty young will rely on what we've been told. And the narrative has always been that this arm of government had never existed. So we had lived most of the times in this country without the understanding, without the appreciation of the fact that we run governance based on three arms of government. We have administered this country without the consideration that there are certain persons who are from the minority in tribe, minority in opinion, minority in their beliefs, who also will require to be heard. This is the only structure, this is the only institution that guarantees that at least that man whose community is not captured by Google should be able to have his voice. But in this process, because of what we have suffered, because of where we have come from, because of where we are coming from, we are oftentimes misunderstood. And for us to make progress as a nation, it requires that this will not only be representative democracy, it also should be constitutional democracy.
On behalf of the Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Professor Ladi Hamalai, MFR, and on behalf, extend the apology of the DG, who is unavoidably absent due to an engaging, actually, and pressing assignment. And she has asked me to represent her and to deliver the keynote address. First, the DG would like to express her profound gratitude to the organizers of this summit for inviting her to deliver the keynote address today. The Director General of NILS is very confident that the theme of this conference chosen by the organizers is very apt, is also topical, and is relevant to the current democratic dispensation and experiment that Nigeria is particularly currently undergoing. The Director General of the National Institute also wishes to salute the organizers of this summit for putting together this summit, and with the sole objective of projecting the importance and the critical role that the legislature plays in our democratic, experiment. Wish participants, the Director General wishes to underscore the importance of the legislature in Nigeria in the context of its democratic governance with regards to three key contexts. The first is the need for understanding of the critical role of the legislature as required by our constitutional democracy, particularly its rooted foundation in Section 4 of the Constitution of Nigeria on the power of the legislature to make laws and to formulate policies with a view to sustaining our democratic governance in Nigeria. The role of the legislature can be understood first and foremost from the point of view of the fact that the legislature is actually the most critical element in our democratic dispensation, because democracy depends on its vitality primarily on the legislature. This is because the legislature is constitutionally mandated to make laws for the security, welfare, and sustainable development of Nigeria. In fact, Section 14, subsection 2, paragraph B of the 1999 Constitution is very clear that the primary purpose of government at all levels in Nigeria, federal, state, and local government in Nigeria, is only to do two things. One, to promote the security, and second, to promote the welfare of all people in Nigeria. And this primary purpose of government underscores the importance of the legislature, which can actually make laws and can also make policy formulation with a view to realizing this purpose of government underscored by Section 14, subsection 2, paragraph B of the Constitution of Nigeria. And in the last 19 years, therefore, the federal legislature, which consists of the Senate and the House, has progressively reformed the banking, insurance, and capital market sectors, the electric power sector, the natural resource governance scheme, the environmental management, public procurement, transport and telecommunication sectors, employment, education, science and technology, as well as reform of human rights protection regime, particularly of the vulnerable groups in Nigeria, through lawmaking, particularly by making new laws, by amending existing laws, and also by repealing obsolete laws that do not add value to democratic governance in Nigeria through these reform initiatives. Examples in the last 19 years, from 1999 to date, of the efforts of the legislature in reforming the sectors mentioned above can be found in the laws that the legislature has actually passed in respect of Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005, the NAITI Act 2007, the Public Procurement Act 2007, the Child Rights Act 2003, the Violence Against Persons Act 2015, the National Human Rights Amendment Act 2010, the Pension Reform Act 2014, the National Health Act 2014, the Secure Transaction in Mobile Assets Act 2017, the Anti-Torture Act 2017, among others. And therefore, from this first actually point of the critical role of the legislature in Nigeria, particularly the federal legislature in Nigeria, for any person outside the scheme of the legislative affairs to think that the lawmakers are doing nothing is surely misleading and also mischievous. Because reforming these critical sectors of the Nigerian economy is part of the critical role of the legislature, not only to promote security and welfare, but also to add value to sustainable development of Nigeria. Second, the legislature in Nigeria, based on our constitutional democracy, with also our federalism rooted in constitutionalism, is the true representative of the people, and therefore the legislature serves as the key political forum through which people's concerns are voiced and interests of the people are mediated between the three arms of government. In the last 19 years, the legislature has proven to be uniquely and powerfully situated to legislate on electoral democracy and to ensure the electoral process in Nigeria is open, transparent, free, fair, and credible at the same time. For example, the Electoral Act 2010, as amended in 2015, is unique in Nigeria's electoral history. This 158 sections Electoral Act, which came into force on 20th August 2010, is the only electoral act in Nigeria that has been operational for the conduct of 2 successful general elections in 2011 and 2015, and is also ready for a 3rd election in 2019. Number 3, the legislature is also critical in the sustenance of democracy in Nigeria, and it highlights its critical importance in our national life, not only to promote security and welfare of the nation and of all the people, but also to ensure that there is actually a sustainable growth and development of all critical sectors of the Nigerian economy for the common good of all as required by the Constitution. This is evident if you actually take a scan of the effort of the legislature in the last 19 years, 1999 to 2018, the legislature has actually tried to sustain democratic governance in Nigeria by serving as the watchdog over the activities of the executive arm of government, and by serving also as a check on the executive through its oversight functions, monitoring, control over public funds, and debt management in the political economy of Nigeria. Has also articulated in her paper that evidence abounds in Nigeria on the necessity of building a workable synergy and desirable working relationship between the legislature and the executive, which lies at the heart of engendering good democratic governance across the Federation. What makes for the success of any government in any democratic setting, it is understanding of the rules that are necessary to prevent such devastating conflicts and the means of resolution of conflicts whenever they arise, in order to avoid a breakdown of democratic governance at any point in time.
Discourse, the legislature would like a democracy without a legislature is like a vehicle without an engine. How is it going to move? I might also say that a democracy with a weak legislature is like a vehicle with not engine. Road safety want to clear it off so that other powerful engines can move. Therefore, for us to have a better democracy, good government, we must have a very strong, independent, with political will legislature. Otherwise, we may not be able to have good governance. This work begins by describing the concept of 3 arms, that is separation of power, in a democratic government, including the respective rules of governance, while placing emphasis on certain key areas pertaining mostly to the policy formulation. In an attempt to examine some critical experiences of the kind of relationship existing among these 3 arms of government since the return of democracy in 1999, and of course, review a few other countries' experience in this regard, it thus goes ahead to proffer some solutions aimed at enhancing better relationship for good governance. I'm asked to talk about the relationship between the 3 arms of government. For want of time, I will abridge what I have done. In section 4, 5, and 6 of 1999 Constitution as amended gives respective rules to different arms of government. So government operations are carried out by these arms of government, and each of them has its clearly defined function and role. These 3 arms have been conceived and positioned in such a manner as not to encroach into the precincts, functions, and responsibility of the other. The legislature has a mandate to make laws for good governance of the people, to determine the ways of raising and spending public revenue, and discuss matters of public importance. They also have large parts to play in the process of amending the Constitution. The roles of the legislature is defined, is very clear. It's not ambiguous. The role of the executive is also very clear. In this discourse, the judiciary will have little to do, because they serve as interpreters and arbiters when the executive and the legislatures fight. The fight that has been described as inevitable, as a necessary evil. In fact, the relationship of legislatures and executives may not always be cordial, shouldn't be too cordial, but should be very, very smooth. So I may also describe it as a necessary evil that the legislature should, if necessary, have brushes with the executives, so long as it will lead to the greater and better governance. It is important to know that the legislatures in modern times do not all perform identical functions. They control the executive in states where the system of government is parliamentary. Example, Great Britain and Canada. Whereas in a presidential system like that of the United States of America, ours, the legislature and executives have independent roles in enhancing the government. According to the late Honorable Justice B.N. Nemeka Ago, simply means operative. At times, the confusion in our role brings about the issues. Executive arm. To what extent is executive? To what extent? The late justice described as operative. They are to operate the policies, the laws, the regulations made by the legislature. Until we understand these roles and streamline them, they will continue to have frictions. In this sense, it includes not only those who are in political and leadership positions, but also the host of subordinate officials. I mean, the bureaucrats, like the policemen, the clerk, and simply to carry out orders. So John Locke asserts that the executive in every terrible sense may also be called supreme. But the caveat that exists shows that the exercise of executive power is confined with written or unwritten constitutional channel, as the case may be. Because we do not have complete separation of powers, it cannot be complete. They are given some latitude to do certain things that will be able to help, that will be able to fill in the gap where the Constitution did not provide for everything. And at times, it's misconstrued in its operation because it's either overzealously or through zealous, whatever, we do that which shouldn't be, which is not allowed. And when there's an objection, then an issue will now come. Then that friction will always remain there. The widest view of the executive power is that it embraces every power which by its nature is neither legislative nor judicial. In affirmation to this notion, Professor Alan Glenhill suggested that executive power is what remains of the functions of government after the legislative and judicial powers have been taken away. What I'm trying to say here is, executive powers could be what is not given to the judiciary or the legislature. For no man can be God. The drafters of the Constitution may not have contemplated or seen everything, so whatever the Constitution did not give the legislature or the judiciary, we can say is left for the executive to do. But in doing that too, there's a caveat that it must be in overall public interest. The formulation of policy and the preliminary steps necessary to implement it by legislation came within the executive powers. However, where the legislative and executive powers are in distinct hands, as they are in all moderate monarchies and well-framed government, there the good of the society requires that several things should be left to the direction of him that has the executive power. For the legislator not being able to foresee and provide laws for all that may be useful to the community, the executor of the law, having the power in the hands, has by the common law of nature a right to make use of it for the good of society. In many cases where the municipal law, that is the law as prescribed, has given no direction, till the legislature can conveniently provide for it, there are apparently many things which the law can by no means provide for, and as such must by necessity be left to the discretion of instead of him that has the executive power in the hands to be ordered by him as a public good and advantage shall require. What I'm trying to say, the legislature cannot provide for everything. So while the doctrine of separation of power can be found in most thriving democracies, prohibits the legislature from conferring any part of the judicial power upon any other than a court. It does not prevent the legislature conferring legislative powers upon the executives, and likewise revoking such powers. What I'm trying to say here is that while the legislature can not take away powers of the judiciary, nor confer more powers, but the legislature itself can also grant more powers to the executives. And that can be called subsidiary legislation, where you empower them to also go ahead and make laws for the good governance of society. You can do that. And where there's a perfect relationship, where it's a smooth one, it is possible, it is doable, and it has been done. The purpose of the legislature is to act as a representative assembly of the people. One of its primary purposes is to enable the representatives of the people debate and discuss any and every subject which may be of sufficient public importance to bring before the parliament. It is important that the executive-legislature relationships are fostered and consolidated in order to prevent tyranny, which is arbitrary or unfair government action that can result when one person has all powers to make, enforce, and interpret the law. Well, these powers are concentrated on one person, then we'll begin to wonder what it will look like. The relationship between the executive and legislature branch should exist clearly, the idea of checks and balances with a focus towards providing the basic necessity for positive living. Let me jump into the Nigerian arena proper. Executive legislature, the executive legislature relationship in Nigeria. We are all aware and can attest of what has been relationship between the executive and the legislature in Nigeria. May I begin from the 5th Assembly. The first instance of executive interference in legislative activities was at the commencement of the 5th Assembly, when the legislature was convoked and the legislature would begin sitting by electing presiding officers of both houses. There was obvious reasons to accuse the executive of trying to select or depose leaders of National Assembly, a situation many saw resulted from the military background of the then president. That was the General President of Obasanjo. At the commencement of the legislature, they were not allowed to do the needful themselves. The interference, the friction normally starts from electing principal officers. Because of party politics, or because of what the executive conceived, they had wanted to impose a particular person or candidate over the legislature. And naturally, based on how they perceive themselves, they will turn and say, no, we will not agree. We are going to do the needful. It is worthy to know that between 1999 and 2002, the Senate had 4 Senate presidents, while the House of Representatives survived with 2 presiding officers, having replaced Alhaji Salisu Buhari, the preferred executive candidate, with Alhaji Gale Naba. That was the height of the friction between the legislature and the executive. The first term of Obasanjo administration from 1999 to 2003 had been described by many to characterize the typical Nigerian over-assertiveness of one side trying to establish dominance over the other as the two sides of discharge their constitutional role. By 2002, there were a series of disagreements between the executive and legislature. Yeah, I will summarize. See, most of the problem we have, I will jump the fridge. Most of the problem we have arises from disobedience from the executive in obeying the legislative will. I'll give you an example. Budget is the basis of disagreement between these two groups. The Constitution says the President shall cause an estimate to be made. Estimate is not static. Estimate is fluid. Estimate could be higher, could be low. This estimate is also a bill, and there are processes of bills before it will become an act. So we must subject that estimate to that for it to be. Therefore, it is only necessary that the Parliament must make their contribution in it. Our Constitution did not give us a guide, but did not limit National Assembly as to what they will do. Some school of thought are of the opinion that you can reduce, you cannot increase. No, I do not think so. Our Constitution says we shall now look at it and turn it into appropriation law. And the law is meant to be paid. In most cases, when we now increase, they say call it burden. But when we reduce, what are they going to call it? Department or what? A typical example right now is the senators deemed it fit that in the confirmation of the acting chairman of EFCC, they declined and refused. Even when court had said they had a right to so do, not to, the executive has also remained refused to do the legislative way. Such things are what causes the friction. And I think that it's only necessary that the executive should look at the collective will of the legislature and do so because they represent the various interests of the 400 and something constituencies across the nation. If we all follow the Constitution and remain to it, we won't have this need for this friction. Consequent upon the above prescription of the Constitution, especially Section 88(1), it can be said that the powers of budget preparation is exclusively the reserve of the executive arm of government. However, in the event of such executive proposal becomes a bill as provided in Section 82, it is the opinion of the legislature that such bills must follow the laid down procedure of bill becoming an act. And in so doing, problem will also ensue. And I also think that one of the ways to reduce this friction is to have, no matter where kept, and the law guarantees, has to shut down, and the law guarantees that Parliament under Section 88 and 89 can get whatever you want to get at all costs by force, including arresting whosoever for the purpose of doing what we can do. In conclusion, I wish to state that the relationship that exists among the three arms of government, especially the executive and legislature, is imperative for good governance. Since good governance implies national development, the branches of government responsible for ensuring national development must interact and complement each other in pursuance of the common goal. As earlier noted, Section 13 of 1990 Constitution, as amended, provide for certain issues that the duty and responsibility of all persons exercising legislative and executive and judicial function, the ordinary persons will suffer. Therefore, the legislator must fight to protect the national economy and national security where there's any sign of disobedience on the legislative will. That is the basis of the problem. But regrettably, the public will also attack the legislature even when they are disagreeing for their common good, because people do not understand the duties and functions of the legislator. What do they do? What should they do? I want to challenge the National Education Agency that they have a duty to do. I think that they should do regional seminars, state seminars, telling them the right, the duties and functions of legislators until we get it right. You may not understand it. It is not my function to begin to think about infrastructures, but it's my duty to provide laws that will guarantee this infrastructure. It is not my duty to begin to provide boreholes and all whatnot, which is expected of me at home. Some call it stomach infrastructure. No, what my duty is to do policies, laws that will help us achieve that. Thank you very much.
And our politics. I would also like to acknowledge the key institutions here and the stakeholders, but most importantly, the People's Parliament, the Nigerian people who are ably represented in themselves here. Please a round of applause for yourself. There are only two forces that can carry light across the globe. The first one is the sun under the heaven, and the second one is the media. And I say that significantly because the sun brings you light, and with light you can see, you can interact, you can make sound judgments. And that is also the role of the media. With the media you can have objections, you can see through the perceptions, and then you can receive them, and then you can evaluate. So when you're talking perception, you talk about them in three stages: perception, reception, and evaluation. I am here to represent my able boss, Dr. Mrs. Tosin Dokwesi, who is unable to make it here due to other critical matters arising. And she has asked that I be honest and deliver her paper without editing. Before the military in Nigeria, the media goes way back. She first of all says, I accepted to be here to speak on this subject matter because now more than ever, the time to remind Nigerians, including the mass media, about the journey to civil rule in our country that we refer today as a democracy and the freedoms that come with it, in which we need to protect and defend, is now. I will not bore you with the many definitions of democracy that I rightly assume we are all conversant with by now. However, let me emphasize that democracy is a way of life and not just a system of government. The mass media do indeed sets up the building blocks of democracy that reflects the desires of the public on service and governance, and this is where the mass media works or needs to work with the legislature. Now, the organizers wanted us to talk about the role of the media, but we choose to talk on the role of the mass media. Because talking about the media must include talking about the social media, and that is a 24-hour conversation. Before the military in Nigeria finally returned to the barracks in 1999, it was only the legislature that was not in existence. While the judiciary was functioning through the law courts, the Executive Council was constituted with the ministries, departments, and agencies had been completely proscribed by the decree. What were more like pseudo-laws making bodies under the military were the infamous Supreme Military Council under Major General Muhammadu Buhari from 1983 to 1985. The Armed Forces Ruling Council under General Ibrahim Babangida from 1985 to 1993. And the Provisional Ruling Council under General Sani Abacha and Abdusalami Abubakar from 1993 to 1999. We will be right, therefore, to say that when we talk of democracy in our country, in our context and elsewhere, we are not only referring to periodic elections, the Constitution, human rights, rule of law, but the legislature as an institution which in our country functions as legislative councils at the local government and houses of assembly at the state level and the two chambers of the National Assembly at the center. I was born, and this is Dr. Tosin Dokwesi talking about when she was born, not me, really. I was born after the First Republic and was barely 10 years old when the Second Republic was inaugurated. Only when I was about to understand my country under civilian rule, the military struck in 1983 and never actually left governance until 1999. My story is similar to that of 198 million Nigerians, especially those who are under 50 years of age and going by demographics and life expectancy in our country, we constitute a higher percentage of the population. Now, the unpopularity of the legislature on the return to democracy in 1999 can therefore be clearly understood, especially when we knew that an elected councillor in the local government was receiving 120,000 naira monthly, far above the salary of the university professor at that time. Today, that same councillor receives 760,000 naira every month. Until recently, we did not even know that was the take-home pay of the National Assembly members. Now we know that each senator receives 13.5 million naira monthly as running costs, in addition to the 2.026 million monthly salary approved by the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. While each member of the House of Representatives takes home 1.985 million naira as monthly salary, arguably so and can be defended here. It was not until 2017 that the Nigerians, including the mass media, had a glance at the mysterious budget of the National Assembly that was never a public document since 1999. Interestingly, the total budget of the National Assembly for the current 2017 fiscal year is standing at 125 billion naira. This is far higher than the 2017 budget of the 10 of the 36 states of the Federation, which includes Abia, Anambra, Enugu, Ekiti, and Nasarawa states. Others include Niger, Zamfara, Adamawa, Gombe, and Yobe states. Why am I raising these issues? Because these are the concerns of the average Nigerian. And indeed, the mass media with the legislature at the three tiers of government. For the fact that the legislature was not part of our national life until 1999, many believe that the funding of the legislature, the activities, and the conversation, which is literally understood as a lawmaker's conversation, is a waste of public funds, and that is not true. Now, let's refer to the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference. You will understand the heartbeats of Nigerians when it comes to the legislature. Suffice it to say that the conference recommended a unicameral legislature at the National Assembly, and the country should have part-time lawmakers, including state houses of assembly, House of Representatives, and those of the Senate. And those people represented cross-sections of Nigerians across the body. We are all having a conversation, you and I, the legislature, the Nigerian citizen, and the federal government at large. The legislature in Nigeria needs to build an image for itself and cultivate the support of the citizens of Nigeria, including and most especially the mass media. I can say with certainty that all media houses in Nigeria have designated correspondents covering the legislature. In fact, AIT and Ray Power and other media houses have specific desks with corps of reporters covering the legislature, and this is because of the importance of the legislature, this arm of government, at both the local, state, and at the federal levels of government. This is the first time that we are having the Senate President and the Deputy Senate President from two different political parties that have no election alliance or coalition but can still work together. In 2010, we also had the National Assembly adopt the famous doctrine of necessity in the constitutional vacuum to resolve the leadership dilemma in the country when the sitting president was incapacitated yet did not transfer power to the vice president. Please, a round of applause. It was another milestone in 2006 when the National Assembly overwhelmingly voted against the infamous third-term agenda to save the country from institutional dictatorship and tyranny, which the media absolutely suffered for. We remember our very own Wenga Rulebo of Focus Nigeria, who was harassed, detained, and also shut down, but you cannot shut down the media because they are the voice of the people. How do we move forward from here? The duty of the mass media as provided in Section 22 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, is at all times to be free to uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. Consequently, the legislature and the lawmakers should also not expect the media houses and the practitioners to always be the one with the availability of the news, but they can come to us with the news. It will also be forthwith to say that the legislature should also deem it fit to uphold this perception by concurrently and consistently engaging the responsibility of the media, bringing accountability to reportage and to that arm of government. The legislature as an institution with the lawmakers on the one hand and the mass media on the other hand obviously need desperately now to do more than ever to keep faith with each other, respectively, for their constitutional duties and their right to the voice of the people. I end again. Across the world, there are only two forces with the responsibility of shedding light. One is the sun under the heaven, and the other is the media. Thank you very much.
I've been asked to talk about citizens' perception of the National Assembly and the way forward. And I won't be stressing a lot on the perceptions because I'm sure you all know that the rating of the National Assembly, as I'm talking to you today, is very low. Am I correct? A lot of people think that the National Assembly is filled with a lot of human beings that only care about themselves. And perceptions are very powerful. Very powerful. Some people actually think, especially some leaders around institutions, because I do a lot of training at top level institutions in Nigeria, and in my interaction, a lot of people think that, wait a minute, that the oversight function of the National Assembly that is supposed to be very powerful to checkmate whether things are done right or not has been highly abused for many years. Is that a perception? Yes. Absolutely. And there are other perceptions, literally, that states that members of the National Assembly, precisely, that a lot of them don't attend plenary sessions. Is that correct? Yes. You see all of the seats, what? Empty seats. So you can imagine, during elections, people fight so hard. People do a lot of work. People put a lot of their aspirations on certain individuals to say, we want you to go and represent us. And then when they'll be discussing issues that concerns the people, those individuals are not seated. And so the young people growing up, they are wondering what kind of members are those. Some of them have not attended sessions so many times that it's a challenge. A lot of Nigerians are voicing this every day. It's a big challenge to the people. And then the one that I personally think, because I did my youth service with the National Assembly Abuja, so I understand the system very well, is to say that over 90% of the people at every point in time elected, to be very honest with you, a lot of people come in there with the wrong motive. And when the motive is wrong, nothing is right. Is that correct? So there are so many others I don't want to mention now, but for me, I would have loved a situation whereby you have all the members of the legislature seated, because the things that I've seen so far in the media is complaining. You have power in your hands. The legislature is the number one, actually, amongst the other arms of government. I hope you know that. Yes. The legislature is number one. It means that they are very powerful in climates that are working when you are invited to Congress. Imagine a few days ago, Mark Zuckerberg, right? The founder of Facebook, was invited to the Senate in America, isn't it? Yes. He was sweating, isn't it? Yes. But he had so much money, billionaire, he was sweating. Why? Because people are afraid of legislative what? Summons. But when that is abused, what happens is that it makes no meaning anymore. So what is the way forward? Ladies and gentlemen, the way forward for me will be self-reinvention. The way forward is what? Self-reinvention, self-revaluation, self-reinvention to say, wait a minute, we have gotten it wrong. There must be boldness for leaders in the National Assembly to say, you know what, if we want respect from the country, from the citizens, from other arms of government, if we want respect, it means that we will first of all, as individuals, show ourselves what? High level of what? Respect. If there are members of the National Assembly that are inconsistent in their actions, in the thing that I've done before that is tarnishing the image of the National Assembly, I can tell you the truth, you can address it internally. When you do that, and then we up the standard, the citizens up the standard to ensure that those who emerge as members of the National Assembly henceforth in the future will be men and women of honor and integrity. Beyond honor and integrity will also be men and women of high level of competencies. I mean, people who have sound leadership capital competencies, who have the capacity to lead themselves first. Because you can't give what you don't have. Absolutely. And so, if that is correct, my submission today will be very simple. And the submission will be that I will advise that each member of the National Assembly will seek to develop these 4 leadership systems I'd like to share with you today. The first leadership system that I would advise that they embrace, and anybody who aspires to go for the National Assembly elections seated here today, I want to let you know that the 4 leadership systems that you designed for yourself will be a way of reinventing yourself. Number 1 will be a learning system. A learning system. As a legislator, you must know. You must what? Know. You must seek knowledge as if your life depends on what? On knowledge. Because leadership flows to the one who knows. A lot of the people that you invite to come and in public hearings, a lot of them, sometimes I watch some of the conversations going on, and I see someone who is prepared from out there. Well, what is he doing? He's bamboozling everybody, literally, and you can see this is what is going on. And you are waiting for somebody to call this guy to order. This guy is actually talking trash. But guess what? Because maybe in my own context, I tell you the truth, you have a lot of smart, intelligent members in the National Assembly, trust me. But there are global practices currently going on that I think that there must be high level of a learning system, high level of pursuit of knowledge, high level of knowledge of certain areas of, if you have been choosing to oversight a particular agencies of government, in that particular context, from the day one, unleash your research team to understand exactly what is going there, who is top of those issues, and profile them immediately. At the end of the day, when you're able to do that, guess what? The quality of information that you have at your disposal before they even arrive will shock every other person. And that is very important. It's just going the extra mile to create a learning system that you don't know it all. In fact, if you ask me, we have a lot of opportunities where people who are in the National Assembly, and see most of them in the State House of Assembly, a lot of them don't value learning systems. A lot of people think once you're elected, you know it all. No, you can't become a lawyer overnight. Absolutely. So you must open yourself for what? To learn. And if you watch, have you ever noticed, watch on television, when some of our people go for international network system where they are meeting with top government leaders, notice, if you look at those leaders from other countries, you find a pen and a notebook. Have you noticed that? But watch some of our own. Watch, I'm very serious with this. Watch. Literally, you can't find anything. And look at the tables, you can't find nothing. But those guys are taking note. They are smart. They know what they are doing. Because they are making sure that everything you say is what? Is recorded. And they will think through it and get back to you with that. When we now go, because you are a chairman of a committee or something, or whatever, you just allow the third parties to do the job right there. You come back, no commitments taking. My thinking is that, can we strengthen the learning system? Speaking truth to power is the most important job of anybody who is a citizen of a great country. And I'm saying that we can review that. It will help us a lot. Number 2 is what I will call an integrity system. An integrity system. Every member who wants to represent us in the National Assembly, those of them who are currently there, you already know that you are challenged already by the perceptions already in public. So it means that the issue of transparency comes on board, true of us. It becomes important that even in the budget, provisions, when you want to be able to create budget and all of that, the view about this is what, I don't say anything that is wrong to say, this is exactly what we earn. I don't know if that works. This is exactly what we earn. If you put that in the public domain, because to be very honest with you, the kind of work that is done in the National Assembly, most of the time is overwhelming. Most of the time, the National Assembly do not even have enough staff to do the job that they are supposed to do. That is the truth of the matter. They don't have the capacity in terms of to do oversight functions, so they need some of those resources. But why hide it in what? In secrecy. That's what is creating the curiosity that everybody is saying, what is going on there? So, and in that context, a lot of people have accused members of the National Assembly most of the time. So some members basically are dealing with us on a daily basis, especially the agencies of government. So they are coming for oversight function. You know what happens there? Some of them have a mindset of, wait a minute, we're done, what's following us back? That's a perception. I don't know how true that is, sir. But can we, in the future, create a system whereby our integrity can be so sure that people will not embarrass us? That's my own submission. Number 3, the vision system. The vision system. Vision system. The vision system for me will be, I'm very happy we have the legislative school specifically. One of the things that I think will be in the curriculum, that every time the members are sworn in, basically, we must begin to share with them the need for each person to create the big vision surrounding the 3 most important functions that they do, that oversee. Number 1, making of law. Specifically, creating law, and number 2, in terms of oversight functions, and number 3, specifically, in terms of creating, I've mentioned creating a budget, right? I've created oversight functions and representation, of the people. Have you noticed that recently, because of the people, Nigerian people do not know the original purpose of making law is not actually, the lawmakers do not have any business going to their, constituencies and providing, keke napep, what do you call it again? Slippers, what else again? Or building roads. They are not executives, they are lawmakers. And because every Nigerian now thinks that that is their job, so every 90% of the focus most time is focused on those areas that have no business with them. Can we change that so that the business of lawmaking is a serious business, and it is supposed to be for very serious people? It is not where I want to make money and build a big house in the next 4 years. My brother, I want to run for house. I have made money, and then he borrows money again. He goes for house. This last regime, some of them were disappointed actually that what they thought was going to happen, literally, the system have been tightened some ways that is not as free as it used to come. And some people are disappointed. But I also want to say that there are a lot of people who are in the National Assembly, hardworking, making laws every day, stretching their neck beyond the limit, who we should also appreciate in this country. And I'm sure we know them. And then the last one is the execution system. It's called the enterprise system. The enterprise system means that whatever the case may be, when you agree to get the job done, the job is done. Let me give you an instance. Imagine if you have, for instance, you have voted on an issue on the floor of the House or the Senate. The issue has been voted on, overridingly voted, and it is required for the executive to do what? To execute. Is that not true? Now, if the executive does not execute what you have already ruled on, whose power is it to act on the matter? Is there a provision in the law that enables the members of the National Assembly to say, you know what, this must be done, otherwise nothing else happens? It is not a room for negotiation. It is not a room for anything. It is that we have ruled on this. Execution is what? Paramount. If you do that 2-3 times, people sit up. But what happens is that when you do that, and somebody will interfere with the execution process, either a meeting is called back and forth, some discussions goes underground, then the next thing is that matter is left on what? Executed, and tomorrow you rule on what? Another matter. That once people know that you don't take your matters, you don't execute your matters seriously, what happens is that they'll say, me, I'll do my own too. And that's why a minister or somebody will say, I am not going to respond to a call from the National Assembly. Do you know what the National Assembly means? The National Assembly is one institution that we should protect in this country. We should protect it with everything that we have got. That's why we must promote to make sure that our very best have access to the National Assembly, not our worst as a nation. If we are able to create these 4 leadership systems seriously, I can tell you the truth, that any day you are in America and you hear a congressman is visiting, there's a high level of respect. And the people hold them so much in respect, but at the same time, they interact with them so much, hold them accountable at the end of the day. Some of them, if they don't deliver in the next 4 years, what happens to them? They are not coming back to the National Assembly. Can the citizens also do the same in this country? In 2019, I'm very, very sure that a lot of them will not come back. That only the ones that are going to come back basically will be those ones who have worked very hard, who have honor and integrity, right? And who have observed some of these things that I've mentioned. And at the end of the day, we can make progress. For me, NOA, this is one of the best investments that you have made so far. Thank you.